Hello everyone there. You are welcome to Living a Full Life Forum with your host, Dr. Violet Kayom. So today we are at it again, and we are looking at a very important topic stemming from what we've been discussing in the past series. And this is how to stop controlling and manipulating people or situations. How to stop controlling and manipulating people or situations. Now, this topic came about because I've received feedback from the previous series, and some people were saying, you know what, I seem to be the controlling and manipulative one in my relationship. And so your video has really helped me identify that. And another person said that, okay, we are really talking about the victim here. How about, the one who is perpetuating the situation? How can we help them? And so because of that, I thought of, this video, that it would be very important for us to also know, the side of the control and manipulator, because incidentally, many times you also tend to fall into that category. It may not be the overt controller and manipulator, but we may have some subtle symptoms and signs of being controlling and manipulative. And you know what? This is a time for us to sweep out every trash in our lives so that we can remain a clean house that is able to give life to people and to ourselves. And so it is a very good topic for me, and I believe it will really benefit you a lot. Okay, so we are going to divide the topic into 3 parts. We'll look at the signs, how to identify that you are actually a controlling and manipulative person. It may not be the overt control and manipulator, but you may be having some of the tendencies towards that. Then we'll look at the childhood and other root causes of being a controlling and manipulative person. So you can look into your own life, flash in there and see where the problem could be coming from. And then, of course, we'll look at some practical strategies. Okay, so just stay tuned, and we are going to enjoy the ride today. So, like I said before, there are people who are overtly controlling and manipulative. So that stands at, one, spectrum. But then there is another whole set who are completely bowed down and given in to be controlled and manipulated. Yes, so when we have difficult childhoods or problems, when growing up, we may end up falling, in those, okay? So they are the outliers. But there are also many in between here, okay? And that is where the majority of us fall. So you find that you may not be controlling and manipulative in many situations, but when you're pushed to the wall, sometimes you may turn on that switch, something that you actually did not realize that you had. And so you may end up, falling into the controlling and manipulative situations. So there are some people, you find that, especially those who are from dysfunctional families. So when they are in a situation where there is a lot of, authority over them, and there is this dominating personality over them, they tend to bow down and instead allow to be controlled and manipulated. Now, when they get out of that situation and they themselves are in places of authority, then they tend to exert so much pressure on others and instead become the controlling and manipulative ones. And I think I realized with time that that is exactly what was happening to me. When I was in a situation where I was the one in control, I really wanted people to do things my way. And, I really wanted to be in charge of everyone, and they had to just flow with that. And then when I was in a situation where there was a more dominating figure over me, I tended to bow down instead and be controlled and manipulated. Now, all those are situations that you don't want to be in. Those are trashes of life that we have to sweep out, because they are all forms of emotional trauma. Okay? You, the controlling and manipulative one, most times, by the way, you are also going through a lot of trauma, and you may not like it. Like, many people don't like the habits they're involved in, but they tend to be in. And so that is why we need to learn to identify whether we actually have those tendencies and work on coming out, because you won't remain forever in that situation if you want to have healthy relationships and live to your full life's potential. Okay, so there are a series of questions you will need to ask yourself, so you can do a self-assessment to determine, where you lie as regards controlling and manipulating people or situations. Okay, so these are some of the questions. Number 1, how much do you like giving advice and opinions and your opinions over people? You see, it is good to advise and it is good to air out your opinions, but it is always not helpful if you give your opinion when it is not required. You see, I've learned in life that you can give advices to people. Someone can actually come to you and ask for your advice, and you give them, and they'll walk away and they'll do exactly the opposite of what you've talked or what they had determined even before coming to you. So even when someone comes to you for advice, they may not take it. So we need to really be careful, how we give advice and air out our opinions, because we do not have to advise each and every one. So if you have the tendency of wanting to put people in order all the time, giving your advices and always airing out your opinion, then you may be a controlling and manipulative person. Because people who are controlling and manipulative, they feel they're always right, and so they are all out there to pour out, their thoughts and opinions, and they think everyone should flow that way. And if you don't take the opinions and advices, then you become like, the bad person in their books. So watch out that. Number 2, how do you feel when someone gives a view that is contrary to yours in a discussion or in an argument? Someone who is controlling and manipulative will want their own views to be taken, and not other people's views. So they look at life as black and white. White is their view and it is the correct one. Any other view aside theirs is black and it is the wrong one. Now that is not right, because you see, we all have different views, and actually what you think is wrong may be the right one, and we may not always be right. Okay, so if you have a tendency not to accept other people's views concerning situations, then you may actually be a controlling and manipulative person. The third is, how much do you allow people to have their way? Okay, for instance, when you've employed them and you delegate them to do some work, how much do you allow them to to use their creativity to do whatever work they're doing, instead of or micromanaging them, being all around them and telling them each and everything? So if you don't allow people to have their way, most likely you may be the controlling and manipulative person. Then how much do you receive feedback, especially if it is negative feedback? There are many people who have issues with receiving negative feedback. They will put up a defense that is so high, and they'll fight to prove other people wrong. But you see, in life, we always have to be open to feedback. And we are going to look at ways in which we can be open to feedback, so we are able to take in the positive and, flash out whatever is not really important at that point. But if you do not seem to want to be advised at all, you don't want to listen to other people's views, or when they're giving you feedback concerning what you've done, especially if it is negative, and you put up all these defenses, you may be a controlling and manipulating person. Okay, and then your level of anxiety and fear, like we saw in the previous video, people who have a lot of insecurity and a high level of anxiety and fear tend to be controlling and manipulative, because they don't want things to fall out of hand. So you need to look at your life. How much fear do you have concerning situations, especially when things are not going your way? And how much anxiety, do you end up having in situations where, things seem to be wayward? So if you have high levels of fear and anxiety over situations that may not really cause so much fear to other people or anxiety to others, then you may be a candidate, one who is actually a controlling and manipulative person. Okay, because you'd want to keep everything under control. The other is, you need to find out from yourself, how secure are you concerning your close associates, especially your partner, your spouse, when they are interacting with other people. There are some people who want to police, their partners, their spouses, or, boyfriends or girlfriends. Like when they are talking to someone of the opposite sex, they want to be all over the place and hear whatever is happening. So your level of security is a very direct, has a direct link to how controlling and manipulative you are. Because when you are not a secure person, you want to control your partner, you want to control the other person, and that is not a good thing, okay? So the other thing is, how often do you allow things, to go on, especially when things are out of your control? How often do you allow things to just move and without you being so anxious and so, disturbed? How do you feel when things don't go your way? There are people who lose it all out. Other things, it is loudness, people who are controlling and manipulative, incidentally. Some of them are very loud and talkative. What is that makes you enter a room and you just want the whole world to feel you in that room? Being extremely loud and talkative. Then the other thing is, if you have a tendency to silent treatment, you always want to bring out this silent treatment and being sullen around people, especially when someone hasn't done things your way. You need to watch out. And the other thing is also being oversensitive. There are some people who are just too sensitive. You have to be so careful with each and every word you speak to them. Now, that is not a good place to be in. That people have to walk like they are walking on eggshells, just because you are around, and so they shouldn't hurt you. That may be a sign of control and manipulation. Okay. So please look out for those signs and symptoms I've talked about on a scale of 0 to 5 and see where you fall. If you're at 4 or 5, you may be actually a candidate, of control and manipulation, being the perpetrator. Then, so the second part is we look at the root causes, like we discussed the other time. Many of these things come from our childhood experiences. When we haven't got, the healthy childhood, then we put out all these stunts to try and defend ourselves in life. So number one, childhood traumas. I gave the example of my friend who was defiled when young. There are other people who are treated very harshly. Others are not allowed, to communicate their emotions effectively. Then in some families, you find that someone has to lie to escape, as severe punishment. The punishments are so excessive, so all those ones may make someone turn into a controlling and manipulative person, because as they are growing up in that family, they didn't have control. The second is dysfunctional families, where there's a lot of instability, uncertainties about situations. Okay, so people put up all kinds of walls around them. I gave the example of, my own upbringing, where you're in a polygamous family and, there's so many things that you're looking at, and you're putting all these defenses around you to protect yourself from being hurt. So in the process of trying to control the situation around you, you may actually end up being controlling and manipulative of people. Then the poor upbringing, the poor, parenting, where a child is allowed to grow up with temper tantrums and they throw it out there. And, a child gets whatever they want. We need to make our children grow so they realize that you don't always get whatever you want in life. So they must be able to manage their emotions when there is a no. When someone tells them a no, they should be able to manage their emotions without throwing tantrums. Because when that is not managed early, then they become, the controllers and manipulators, as they want things to always go their own way. Then, of course, there are families where you find their highly expressed emotions, a lot of anger, a lot of anxiety, a lot of fear. So someone grows up thinking that in order to control situations, you have to really close all the knots in life and make sure that everything is under control, because anything can go wrong. A gentleman was telling how, the mother was extremely fearful, and she would put so many rules to make sure that nothing goes wrong. So he grew up that way, and so he ended up controlling his family so much that, we have to make sure when we are going to the airport, make sure the bags are all packed like this, and then make sure you label the bags. And so if anything goes wrong, well, I know it is good to be orderly, but that perfectionism may actually be a sign of control and manipulation. And usually it stems from families where there's a lot of, fear, anxiety, and those highly expressed emotions, okay? Then some families find there's extreme demand for performance. A child, is always expected to perform so much, to meet the expectations, and they don't seem to meet the expectations in the home. So they end up developing the performance-based confidence. And so they want to do everything the perfect way. Now, perfectionism is not a good thing. It may sound good, but many times it steals away who you actually are, because you're always on this performance trying to prove a point. So people who have grown up in those situations find that they end up being very controlling and manipulative. So please be on the lookout, okay, for those root causes. And in case you identify any of them, then now we'll move to step 3, the practical strategies by which we can really come out of being controlling and manipulative. Okay. Yes, so what are some of these practical strategies? Number 1, there's a concept called self-parenting. Now that sounds, a bit unique and possibly weird. Self-parenting. So it is true that many of these things we didn't learn them as we were growing up. Okay, because our parents, just like, any other human being, they also had their shortcomings, and they may not have known all these things. But you can't just flow with the tide just because things did not go right, okay, as you're growing up. So you can make a choice to now reverse or undo some of the things that happened to you. And one of these strategies is to become a parent of yourself. You become self-parenting. So the things that your parents are not able to do, now you do them. For instance, if you didn't receive enough affirmation as you grew up, you start, affirming yourself. If you didn't receive, if you are more pushed into performance-based confidence, now you start undoing that, okay? So now that is going to help you, with situations where you expressed your fears, just anyhow, or you had that temper tantrums, you are not controlled. When whatever you wanted, you always received. But now you have grown up and you find in life that that is not how life is. Many times we want things, but we don't get them. And so you parent yourself that, oh, I may not always get what I want. And so in case I'm not able to get what I want, what can I do? So you're able to develop those strategies on how to still remain stable when you don't get what you want from people. The other thing is, the second thing you're going to have to do is to go through the healing therapies. And I know we are going to have a video where we are going to talk a lot about emotional healing, especially from childhood wounds, because those are very critical. They form a huge base of problems for us. Okay, so relieving some of those experiences you had. For instance, if you have suffered defilement when you are young, or you are really mistreated, accused falsely, so you go through those experiences, because many times you've buried them in the subconscious. So you go through them and relieve them, and then now you start working on forgiving the perpetrators, and releasing yourself from that grip. It is just like when you have an abscess and you cut it open and you remove the pus, and then you clean it, you flush out all the debris, and you apply some antibiotics, for it to heal. So that is what relieving, the past pains does. When you relieve it and then allow yourself to go through those experiences, then it removes those pains. Okay, so that next time when you remember, whatever you went through, then you receive, you no longer have that pain, of that experience. Of course, it is with time. And with time, you can actually dissociate yourself from all these pains, okay? Yes, so we need to do healing therapy from our traumas. Then we need to come out of the performance-based confidence, okay? And this we can do by having a lot of self-acceptance and self-love, that you don't have to always perform to be accepted, and you're able to accept your uniqueness, okay? And then the fourth is we need to work on our fears and anxieties, and there are many therapies for that. We'll also go through it, but we need to learn to take deep breath. When you are in a fearful situation, things are not going your way, learn to take deep breath. Breathe in and out. Breathe in and out. If you do that like 5 times, when you breathe in and out, you enable more oxygen to come into your body. And so whatever anxiety has been causing lots of issues in your brain, it seems to reduce that level of anxiety. And then sometimes you may do the counting. Count 1 up to 10 before responding to a situation that is very fearful. and causing a lot of anxiety unto you. And so as you do that, you find that you will come out of those fears, and anxiety that make you want to control and manipulate others. Then you are going to have to practice to try as much as possible to control giving advice and opinion. Like I said, yes, it is good to advise and give your opinions in situations, but many times these are not welcome by many people. So you don't have to be the one policing everyone and telling everyone what is right or wrong. You can air out your view, but allow people their space so they can also learn from their own experiences and possibly also from their own mistakes. Yes, so you are not going to be the one, to give all the advice and opinion. Give it when it is required, but hold back when it is not required. And you're going to have that sensitivity to know when your advice is required and when it is not. Okay. So the other thing we are going to have to do is to learn to receive feedback, especially if you're the defensive one. You don't easily take, criticisms in a positive way. I know there are so many people who give feedback in a very bad way, and we also really need to watch out for that. Okay. So, and we need to be careful when giving feedback. When you give a feedback, make sure your motive is right. It's not to destroy the other person, because the way you give feedback will also determine how the other person will respond. But you who is receiving the feedback, even when the other person has given it the wrong way, just know that feedback is just like when you go to the garden and you get your millet from the garden or the wheat from the garden. Okay. So by the time you're harvesting it and bringing it home, it has the grains, it has the stems, it has the leaves, it has all that stuff. So when you bring it home, you dry it and beat it. So out of that, there is what is valuable, the grains that you bring out. There are the stems that you can use for future purposes, maybe for mulching your garden again. And then there's what has to be burnt immediately. So that is the same case with feedback. When someone gives you feedback, you can choose the good to pick out of that. You can choose somehow good things to shelve to be used for future purposes. Then there's others that you have to flush out. You just have to burn out. Okay, so even when the feedback is given in a bad way, sometimes there are actually good things that you can pick out. So how can we learn to respond to feedback? Make sure you develop the listening. At that point, even when your emotions are boiling high as someone is giving you the feedback, try to breathe in and out and breathe out. Breathe in and breathe out while you're listening. So listen. After listening, process whatever has been told to you. Take some minutes, take some few seconds to process before you respond. Okay, as you practice that, you find that you will let go of those defensive guns around you, and you may become less controlling and manipulative. The other is we need to let go of control. Let go of people. Let's allow people to have their space. If I could say, let us learn to mind our own business. Okay, so I've learned that the more controlling and manipulative you are, actually the more detestable you are around people. I used to be that kind of person, policing my siblings very much, and I just wanted everything to go right. Okay, it wasn't like out of a bad heart, but I just wanted them to do the things the right way, to do housework the right way, or to live their lives the right way. And so I would just give all kinds of advices, and I just wanted things to be done in this controlled environment. But you see, I became more and more detestable. You find that instead of them coming closer to me, they just became even, more distance from me. And I also learned that in my home, that when people come and they're working with you or working for you, many times you may train them, but allow them to also have their own creativity. Because those days I would want to show them exactly what to do, and they should just do it my way. But when I came out of that controlling and manipulative, tendency, I realized that many times actually the way they did their thing was better than what I would suggest. Okay, so allow people to grow in their space. And if they are to make mistakes, it's okay for people to learn from their experiences and mistakes. It is still okay. Then the other thing is we need to come out of pride. You see, in controlling and manipulating, there's an element of pride. So you need to train yourself to value other people's opinion. Don't think that it is only your opinion that is right. That if it is not your opinion that is taken, then everything else is wrong. And so you must practice saying that, I think I am right, but I may be wrong. And it's actually true that sometimes we think we are right, but we are actually wrong. I remember we were having an argument at home that I gave you the key, and they were responding, no, you didn't give us the key. I was like, I gave you the key, you didn't give us the key. And so I went and checked in my handbag, and behold, I had the key in the handbag. So I thought I was right, but I was wrong. So even when you think you're right, you may actually be wrong, okay? So make sure you get out of pride and allow also other people's opinions to value. It's not only your opinion that is always right, okay? Let's cultivate trust in our relationships. And that especially goes in, intimate relationships. So you do not have to be around your spouse and look into their phones and, all that to make sure they are not cheating on you. By the way, if someone decides to cheat on you, they can cheat right under your nose and you will never even know it. Okay, so let's let go of controlling people and trying to be all around them, to know what is happening around them, because when you do that, then you become too difficult to live with. Let us learn to trust. I know things go wrong, but let's give people their space so we can trust them, and then that is what builds a relationship. Okay, so I have learned that minding my own business and trying to improve myself actually makes me better. And when you try to improve yourself, when you become better, then you will attract the right people, but also your spouse or your partner or whoever it is around you will tend to change towards what you're becoming, because you become that strong force here, you become that drawing force, so people want to be like you. And then finally, I've learned that how to come out of control and manipulation is focus on yourself. Do your self-improvement. Make sure you do self-assessment, self-awareness, keep what is good, flush out what is bad, and mind your business. Yes, focus on yourself and develop the self-love. The more you are at improving yourself, the better you'll attract the right people. And so thank you so much for paying attention. We've looked at the strategies. We've seen that you need to identify some of those key points, that may actually show that you are a controlling and manipulative person. Look down into your family, into your childhood, and look at any root causes of being a controlling and manipulative person. And then, of course, make sure you develop these practical strategies. Thank you so much for being part of Living a Full Life Forum. Please do subscribe, share with your friends, and give us the feedback. We love you and we wish you all the best in your endeavors. Have a blessed time.